Hello, my friends. Before we begin, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I booked the Airbnb because it was cheap. That's the truth people don't like admitting, but it's always the truth. I had just finished a freelance contract that burned me out mentally and emotionally. I wanted silence, distance, and the illusion of starting over for a week. The listing promised total privacy, remote forest setting, no neighbors. The photos showed a modern cabin, wood-paneled walls, big windows, clean white sheets, a fireplace that looked more decorative than functional. The host's name was Evan. 5-star rating, over 200 reviews. Every single one said some version of the same thing. Unforgettable stay. Time feels different here. You won't want to leave. At the time, I thought that last one was just marketing fluff. Day 1. The drive took longer than expected. My GPS lost signal halfway through a narrow mountain road, and I had to rely on Evan's written directions. Turn left at the fallen oak. Ignore the rusted gate. Drive until the road stops looking like a road. That should have been my first warning. By the time I arrived, the sun was already sinking behind the trees. The cabin sat alone in a clearing, perfectly centered, like someone had measured the forest and decided this exact spot mattered more than the rest. The door was unlocked. Evan had messaged me earlier. Self-check-in. Make yourself at home. Inside, the place smelled faintly of pine and something colder, like stone after rain. Everything looked exactly like the photos, too exactly. No clutter, no personal items, no signs anyone had ever lived there, only stayed. On the kitchen counter was a leather-bound notebook. The first page read, "House rules. No loud music after sunset. Do not open the locked door in the hallway. If you hear knocking at night, do not answer. Checkout is at 11 a.m. sharp." I laughed out loud. Some hosts liked quirky rules. It was probably a theme. I cooked dinner, drank a glass of wine, and lit the fireplace. As darkness swallowed the windows, the forest outside turned into a solid black wall. No crickets, no wind, just silence so thick it pressed against my ears. That night, I slept deeply. Too deeply. Day 2. I woke up disoriented, like I'd been pulled out of a dream mid-sentence. The digital clock beside the bed read 9:12 a.m., but my body felt like it was closer to evening. I checked my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. I shrugged it off and made coffee. That's when I noticed the notebook again, now open on the kitchen table, though I was sure I'd left it on the counter. A new page had been written in shaky handwriting. "You made it through the first night." Good. I told myself Evan had written it as part of the experience. Maybe the cabin catered to horror fans. Maybe I was overthinking it. Still, I didn't touch the notebook again. I spent the day hiking nearby trails, or at least I tried to. Every path curved back toward the cabin eventually, no matter which direction I walked. By late afternoon, I gave up and returned, frustrated and oddly tired. That night, I heard knocking. Soft, polite, 3 taps on the front door. I froze in bed, staring at the dark ceiling. The knocking came again. 3 taps. I remembered the rules. I didn't answer. Day 3. The mirror didn't reflect me properly. At first, I thought it was the lighting. Morning sun filtered through the trees in uneven patterns, but when I brushed my teeth, my reflection lagged behind, just a fraction of a second. When I lifted my hand, it lifted its hand a moment later. I stepped back. So did it. I laughed nervously and told myself I needed sleep. That's when I noticed something else. The hallway. It was longer than it had been the day before. I counted the doors. Yesterday, there were 3. Today, there were 4. The new door was at the end. Plain wood, no handle. I didn't go near it. That afternoon, I tried messaging Evan. No response. I checked the app. My reservation still showed active. Checkout, Friday. But the date on my phone said Thursday. I was sure I'd only been there 2 nights. Day 4. I woke up to footsteps, not inside the cabin, outside, slow, heavy, circling. I peeked through the window. Nothing, just trees. But the snow, there hadn't been snow before, was covered in footprints, bare feet, too many toes. They led to the cabin and stopped at the walls. Inside, the notebook was open again. Almost time. I packed my bags. I didn't care if I had to walk for hours. I was leaving. The front door wouldn't open. I pulled harder, slammed my shoulder into it. Nothing. That's when I heard the hallway door unlock itself. Click. Click. A voice came from behind it. My voice. Checkout is at 11, it said. The locked door. I don't remember deciding to open it. I remember standing in front of it, hand shaking, knowing deep in my bones that this was the moment everything tipped from wrong into unrecoverable. The door opened inward. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lined with doors on both sides, hundreds of them. Each one had a small brass number. I recognized some immediately. Number 214, my childhood bedroom. Number 301, my first apartment. Number 117, the hospital room where my father died. At the very end was a door labeled number 000. It was already open. Inside was the cabin, my cabin, and someone was living in it, sleeping in my bed, wearing my clothes, typing on my laptop. I watched as it opened the Airbnb app and sent a message. Hope you're enjoying your stay. Let me know if you need anything. Signed, Evan. The truth. The notebook explained everything. This place wasn't a rental. It was a filter. People came here when they were tired of their lives, when they wanted quiet, when they wouldn't be missed right away. The cabin watched them, learned them, copied them, and when checkout came, it decided who stayed. The rule about knocking. That was the cabin checking if you still wanted your life. I screamed. I begged. I tried to run back down the hallway, but the doors were gone. Only one remained. 000. I woke up in the bed. The clock read 9:12 a.m. My phone buzzed. A notification from Airbnb. Your stay is ended. Please leave a review. Outside, a car pulled into the clearing. New guests. I smiled and went to answer the door. I didn't book the Airbnb myself. That's the part that still doesn't make sense. The confirmation email said my name. The app showed my account. My credit card had been charged. Every digital trail pointed back to me. But I have no memory of choosing that place. I only noticed the reservation when a reminder popped up on my phone. Your trip begins tomorrow. I assumed I'd booked it during one of my sleepless nights. I had been struggling with insomnia for months, waking up to emails I didn't remember sending and browser tabs I didn't remember opening. Stress does strange things to memory. The listing was ordinary, almost aggressively normal. A quiet suburban home, perfect for solo travelers, no parties, no pets. The photos showed a beige 2-story house in a cul-de-sac, trimmed hedges, white garage door, the kind of place you forget 5 minutes after driving past. The host's name was Mara. She had no profile photo, just a bio that said, "Please respect the house, it respects you." I should have canceled, but something about the place felt necessary, like it was already decided. Arrival. The neighborhood was too quiet, not peaceful, suspended. No kids riding bikes, no dogs barking, no distant lawnmowers or traffic hum. Every house looked occupied, but none of them showed signs of life. The Airbnb key was in a lockbox, standard procedure. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and cold air, like it had been sealed for a long time and only recently reopened. Everything was furnished, but nothing felt lived in. The couch cushions were firm, untouched. The fridge was empty except for a single bottle of water labeled, "For you." No brand, just handwriting on masking tape. In the living room, a security camera sat openly on a shelf. That surprised me. It wasn't hidden, it wasn't subtle. It was pointed directly at the couch. Next to it was a small laminated card. Camera is inactive during guest stays. I didn't believe that for a second. Still, I told myself it was common these days. Hosts wanted to protect their property. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I unpacked, ordered food, and tried to relax. That night I slept lightly, drifting in and out, aware of the house in a way that felt uncomfortable, like sleeping in a stranger's bed with their eyes still on you. The first problem. I noticed it the next morning. The camera had moved, not much, just enough that it was angled more toward the hallway now. I stood there, staring at it, my heart ticking faster with each second. I checked the app. No messages from Mara, no alerts. I messaged her anyway. Me. "Hey, quick question. Does the camera ever move automatically?" The reply came instantly. "Mara. Only when it needs to." That was it. No emoji, no clarification. I laughed nervously and told myself it was a joke. Some hosts liked being mysterious, but the rest of the day I felt watched. Every room had at least one camera, not hidden, always visible, always labeled inactive, except one. The bathroom. The files. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard a faint clicking sound coming from the living room. Soft, repetitive. I followed it. The camera light was on. A small blue dot blinked steadily. I unplugged it. The clicking stopped. My phone buzzed immediately. "Mara, please don't interfere with the equipment." I didn't respond. Instead, I noticed something else, something far worse. The TV was on, not playing a show, playing a video. It took me a moment to realize what I was watching. It was me. Earlier that day, sitting on the couch, eating, scrolling through my phone. The footage wasn't grainy or wide-angled like a security feed. It was intimate, close, framed from angles that cameras shouldn't have been able to capture. There were folders listed beside the video. Each one had a date, and inside those folders were other people. Dozens of them, different faces, different voices, all inside this same house, all unaware, all recorded. The most recent folder was labeled with today's date. Inside it was a file named Baseline Behavior. The rules appear. I tried to leave. My car wouldn't start. No error, no warning lights, just dead. I called roadside assistance, no signal. When I went back inside, the laminated card next to the camera had been replaced. This one read, "House Observation Rules. Do not disable recording devices. Follow your usual daily routine. Do not attempt to access restricted files. Do not leave the property before observation concludes." I hadn't seen anyone enter the house. I hadn't heard a door open. My phone buzzed again. "Mara, you're doing fine so far. Please don't make this difficult." Understanding. Over the next 2 days, I learned the truth piece by piece. This Airbnb wasn't for vacations. It was for studies, behavioral mapping, psychological thresholds, fear response. The guests weren't chosen randomly. They were people with patterns, insomnia, anxiety, depression, isolation, people who lived mostly inside their own heads, people who wouldn't be believed if they complained. Every camera recorded not just what I did, but how I did it. How long I stared at walls, how often I checked my phone, how quickly I reacted to unexpected sounds. One video showed a man breaking down after realizing he was being watched. Another showed a woman calmly continuing her routine as if nothing was wrong. The file names weren't names, they were outcomes. Compliance, resistance, failure. I couldn't find any footage labeled survival, the final test. On the fourth night, the power went out. Every camera light turned red. The house felt suddenly alive, creaking, breathing, shifting. A new message appeared on the TV screen. Please demonstrate your response to loss of observation. I realized then what they wanted, not obedience, not panic. They wanted to see who people became when no one was watching anymore. I sat on the couch. I did nothing. Hours passed. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't try to escape. Eventually, the cameras powered back on. My phone buzzed. Mara. Interesting result. Check out. The next morning, my car started. The front door opened easily. The cameras were gone. Before I left, I checked the TV one last time. There was a new folder. It had my name on it. Inside was a single file. Suitable candidate. At the bottom of the screen, text appeared. Your review matters. Now I'm home now. Everything is normal, except sometimes when I'm alone at night, I notice things. My laptop camera light flickers. My phone records audio when I'm not using it. And this morning, I received a message from Airbnb. Your host has invited you to become one. I haven't replied yet, but I keep thinking about how quiet that neighborhood was, and how efficient the system seemed, and how easy it would be to watch. I booked the Airbnb because it was the only place left that would accept a same-day reservation. I had been driving for 11 hours straight, my eyes burning, my thoughts turning sluggish and dark. In that way they do when you're too tired to feel afraid anymore. Every hotel along the highway was either full or wildly overpriced. When the Airbnb notification popped up, instant book available, I didn't even read the full description. I should have. The house was on the edge of a small coastal town, the kind of place that existed mostly for summer tourists, and then emptied itself in the off-season. It was late October. The ocean air smelled metallic and cold, and the streets were lined with dark storefronts and handwritten "See you next year" signs taped to windows. The address led me to a narrow road that ended abruptly at a single house perched above the water. No neighbors, no streetlights, just the sound of waves crashing below the cliff. The host's instructions were short: door unlocked, lights on, please close all windows before sleeping. That last part felt strange, considering the ocean breeze was the only pleasant thing about the place. Inside, the house was old. Not charming old, tired old. The floors creaked under my weight in a way that suggested they remembered every step taken on them. The walls were painted a dull off-white, but the paint had bubbled in places like it had been applied over something damp. The smell hit me next. It wasn't rot, it wasn't mold. It was breath, warm, human, as if the house had been sealed shut with people inside and only recently opened again. I cracked a window without thinking. The air rushed in fast, almost aggressively, and for a brief moment I thought I heard a sound underneath the wind, something like a sigh. I slammed the window shut and locked it. I told myself I was exhausted, that my brain was misfiring, that I needed sleep. The bedroom was upstairs, facing the ocean. The bed was already made, the sheets tucked so tightly it felt more like a display than a place meant to be used. There was no mirror in the room. I noticed that immediately, though I couldn't say why it mattered. I collapsed onto the mattress fully clothed and fell asleep almost instantly. That was the first mistake. I dreamed I was standing in the hallway, staring at the bathroom door. I could hear running water inside, the sink maybe, or the shower. In the dream, I knew someone else was in the house, not an intruder, something that belonged there. I reached for the bathroom handle, and just before my fingers touched it, I heard my own voice from inside say, Don't. I woke up choking on air. The house was silent. I checked my phone. No service, no Wi-Fi, even though the listing had promised it. The time read 3:17 a.m. I went downstairs to get water. The kitchen faucet was dripping. I stood there for a long moment staring at it, my skin prickling with unease. I was sure I hadn't turned it on before going to bed. When I twisted the handle, the water didn't come out right away. Instead, I heard a sound inside the pipes, movement, not a rush, not a flow, shifting, slow, like something crawling through a narrow space. Then the water burst out violently, splashing over the sink and onto the floor. I shut it off and backed away, my heart pounding. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, the house looked different, not in an obvious way. The furniture was in the same place, the walls were the same color, but something about the space felt tighter, like the rooms had subtly shrunk while I wasn't looking. I noticed wet footprints on the floor leading from the bathroom to the hallway. They were barefoot. They were my size. I stood perfectly still, trying to remember if I'd walked around during the night. Sleepwalking wasn't something I'd ever done before, but the longer I stared at the prints, the more certain I became that they hadn't been made by me. The toes were wrong, too long, too spread out. I checked the Airbnb app for the host's name. It was blank. No profile picture, no username. Just a gray circle in the word host. When I tried to message them, the app froze. I decided to leave. I packed my bag quickly, refusing to let my eyes linger on the corners of rooms or the dark gaps beneath furniture. The front door opened easily enough, but when I stepped outside, my stomach dropped. The road was gone. In its place was a steep slope of jagged rock leading straight down to the ocean. I stood there, staring, my mind scrambling for explanations. I'd driven up that road. I was sure of it. I remembered turning off the main street, the potholes, the rusted mailbox near the bend. None of it was there now. Behind me, the front door closed on its own. The sound echoed far too loudly. I turned slowly. The house looked taller than it had the night before. The windows were darker, the glass reflecting the gray sky in a way that made it impossible to see inside. I tried the door. Locked. I pounded on it until my hands hurt, shouting for anyone who might hear me, though I knew there was no one around. That was when the sound started again. Inside the walls. Not footsteps. Breathing. Deep and uneven, like lungs struggling to fill. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on a loose stone. As I fell, I saw something move behind the upstairs window. A shape. Watching. I don't remember how long I sat there on the ground before the door opened again. The house let me back inside. The smell was stronger now, overwhelming, like standing too close to someone's mouth while they whispered. I noticed then that the walls were damp to the touch, not wet, sweaty. The pipes began to rattle. From the kitchen sink, the bathtub, the toilet, all at once. Water poured out of every fixture, flooding the floor, rising around my ankles, my calves. The water was warm, too warm. As it climbed, I felt something brush against my leg beneath the surface. I screamed and thrashed backward, slipping and hitting my head against the counter. When I came to, the house was dry, perfectly dry. No water damage, no puddles, no sign anything had happened. Except my clothes were soaked, and the footprints were back, leading upstairs. I followed them. I don't know why. Some part of me understood that resisting the house only made things worse, that it responded to fear the way lungs respond to air. The bathroom door was open. Steam filled the room, fogging the air so thickly I could barely see the tub. I stepped closer. Inside the bathtub was water, still and glassy. And beneath the surface I could see a face, my face, but older. The skin sagged, The eyes were sunken and bloodshot. The mouth moved soundlessly, forming words I couldn't hear. The water began to ripple. The reflection reached up. I stumbled back, slipping again. And when I looked up, the mirror was there. It hadn't been before. Mounted above the sink, streaked and clouded. In it, I saw myself standing in the bathroom, but I was smiling. I ran. I don't remember navigating the house, only the sensation of doors appearing where there hadn't been doors before, hallways stretching, staircases looping back into themselves. The house wasn't rearranging itself randomly. It was reorganizing me. I ended up in the basement. I hadn't known there was a basement. The air down there was thick and warm, like a crowded room with no windows. The walls were lined with pipes, hundreds of them, snaking and twisting in impossible patterns. They pulsed, each one in time with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. There were names etched into the metal. Some were scratched out. Some were worn smooth, as if traced repeatedly by desperate fingers. At the center of the room was a large tank filled with murky water. Inside it floated shapes, bodies, not dead, sleeping, breathing. Their faces were pressed against the glass from the inside, mouths opening and closing as if tasting the water. I saw myself among them, or the version of me that had been smiling. I understood then. The house wasn't haunted. It was hungry. It lured people in when they were tired, isolated, half empty already. It filled itself with them slowly, carefully, using their breath, their warmth, their presence to keep itself alive. The pipes weren't plumbing, they were throats. The walls weren't sweating, they were working. I felt pressure behind my eyes, behind my ribs, like something inside me was trying to align with the rhythm of the house. My breathing slowed without my permission. I tried to hold my breath. The pain was immediate, agonizing. My lungs burned, my vision narrowed, and the house seemed to lean closer, eager. I let the air out. The pain stopped. The house exhaled with me. When I woke up, I was in the bed upstairs. Morning light filtered through the windows. The ocean looked calm, almost beautiful. My phone buzzed. A notification from Airbnb. Hope you enjoyed your stay. Please remember to leave the house as you found it. I sat up. My chest felt different, heavier. Each breath took more effort than it should have. I went to the bathroom. The mirror was gone again, but the sink was running. I leaned over it, coughing, gasping, trying to draw in enough air to steady myself. The sound from the drain was unmistakable now, breathing, in time with mine. I don't know how long I stayed there, but eventually I felt something shift inside my chest, a loosening, a release. The breathing sound grew louder, stronger. When I inhaled, the house inhaled with me. When I exhaled, it did too. I realized then that I wasn't leaving, not really. I was becoming part of the structure, a new passage, a new pipe. Later that day, I heard a car pull up outside, fresh footsteps on the porch, a voice calling out, "Hello?" The front door opened. I tried to scream. All that came out was air. I rented the Airbnb because it advertised something I hadn't seen before. Guaranteed silence, not quiet, silence. I'd just come out of a messy separation and needed space where nothing reminded me of another person. No TV noise bleeding through walls, no footsteps above me, no voices. The listing promised a detached guest house on private land, far from roads, far from people. The host emphasized it repeatedly in the description, almost obsessively. Perfect for writers, thinkers, and those who need to be alone. The reviews were strange but positive. Finally slept. Mind felt clear for the first time in years. Hard to describe, but I left lighter. No one mentioned fear. No one mentioned anything going wrong. So I booked it for 4 nights. The place was harder to find than expected. My GPS gave up the last mile and spun uselessly, forcing me to follow the host's written directions. They ended with a sentence that struck me as oddly formal. "Once you arrive, please do not leave the property until your stay is complete." I told myself it was just liability language. The guest house sat behind a larger, older home, wooden, weather-beaten, and dark. No cars, no lights, no movement. The smaller building looked newer, almost out of place, like it had been dropped there recently. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was still in a way that felt unnatural, not stale, held, like the room was waiting for something to disturb it. There was no TV, no radio, no clock. Even my phone lost signal the moment I stepped inside. The Wi-Fi network existed, but no matter how many times I tried, it refused to connect. On the small dining table sat a single envelope with my name written neatly across the front. Inside was a folded page. "Thank you for respecting the silence. Please avoid unnecessary speech while indoors. If you hear sounds that do not belong to you, do not respond." I frowned. Avoid unnecessary speech? I laughed quietly to myself, the sound oddly loud in the room. The walls didn't echo, but they seemed to absorb the noise in a way that made me uncomfortable. I put the letter away and unpacked. That night, I cooked dinner without music, without a podcast, without any background noise at all. I hadn't realized how dependent I was on constant sound until it was gone. When I finally went to bed, the silence pressed down on me like weight. No wind, no insects, no distant traffic, just nothing. I fell asleep faster than I expected. I woke up to the sound of my own breathing. It sounded wrong, too loud, too close. I sat up, heart racing, and listened. The sound continued. Inhale, exhale, but it wasn't coming from my chest. It was coming from the room, the walls. I held my breath. The sound stopped. I let out air slowly. The sound returned, perfectly synchronized. I stayed frozen until exhaustion dragged me back under. The next morning, my throat hurt, not sore, raw, like I'd been screaming for hours, even though I knew I hadn't made a sound. I tried clearing my throat and was startled by how harsh my voice sounded in the quiet room. The envelope was back on the table. I was sure I'd put it in my bag. This time, the note inside was shorter. "Please keep vocalization to a minimum." I didn't laugh this time. I stepped outside for air and immediately felt relief. The world outside wasn't silent. Birds chirped, leaves rustled. Somewhere far off, a dog barked. I took a deep breath and realized I'd been unconsciously breathing shallowly inside. The main house loomed behind me. Its windows were dark, but I had the strong sensation of being observed. I walked around the property, hoping to find another road, another way out. The trees were thick, the ground uneven, but I could still see the guest house clearly. No matter how far I walked, it never seemed to get farther away. Eventually, my head started to ache, a dull pressure behind my eyes, and I returned. Inside, the silence swallowed me again. That afternoon, I caught myself talking, not out loud, in my head. And every time I formed a thought with words, the pressure in my skull increased. I tried humming instinctively and nearly collapsed from the pain that followed. Something inside the house didn't want language. That night, I dreamed I was standing in a wide white room with no doors. A man stood in front of me, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. His face was contorted with panic. I realized he was trying to scream. When I woke, my pillow was damp, not with sweat, with saliva. My jaw ached as if it had been clenched for hours. I went to the bathroom mirror and froze. My lips were pale, almost colorless. When I tried to say my own name, it came out wrong, slurred, incomplete. like I'd forgotten how to shape the sounds properly. I slapped my hand over my mouth. The walls breathed louder. By the third day, I understood what was happening. The house wasn't just silent. It was collecting sound, not noise, speech, words, language. Every time I spoke, every time I thought in sentences, something inside the structure fed on it. The pressure eased slightly when I stayed quiet, when I let my thoughts dissolve into images instead of words. I found a notebook in a drawer I hadn't noticed before. Its pages were filled, not with writing, with indentations, thousands of them, as if someone had pressed a pen down over and over without ink, carving grooves into the paper. At the back of the notebook, a single sentence was written clearly: "Silence preserves us." I dropped it and backed away. That night, I heard something new, not breathing, whispering, so faint I almost missed it. It wasn't coming from one direction. It was layered, overlapping, crawling along the walls, voices without sound, mouths moving without air. I understood then that the silence wasn't empty. It was full. On the morning of checkout, I packed quickly. My head throbbed constantly now, my thoughts blurred and fragmented. It took effort to remember words, simple ones: door, shoes, keys. I stepped outside with my bag, heart hammering. Relief washed over me. Then I tried to speak. "Hello?" Nothing came out, not even a whisper. Panic surged. I tried again, forcing air through my throat until it burned. Still nothing. Behind me, the guest house door was open. Inside, I could hear it clearly now. Voices, complete sentences, clear, strong. My voice, speaking words I couldn't remember ever saying, laughing, arguing, crying, living. The host stepped out from the main house. I hadn't seen him before. He was older than I expected, his face lined but calm. He smiled gently, sympathetically. "It's always hardest at the end," he said. I tried to scream. I fell to my knees instead. He crouched in front of me, careful not to raise his voice. "The house keeps what it needs," he continued. "You'll be fine. People adapt remarkably well without language, quieter lives, simpler." He gestured toward the guest house. "Someone new arrives tonight. They're very tired. They talk too much." I shook my head violently, tears streaming down my face. He sighed. "You should go now. Roads are easier to find once the silence settles." I stood on shaking legs and walked away. The farther I went, the easier it became to breathe. By the time I reached my car, I could hum again. Not speak, never speak. I'm home now. Doctors say it's psychological, stress-induced aphasia. They tell me to rest, to write, to practice forming words. But every time I try, I feel that pressure again, that presence, listening, waiting. And sometimes, late at night, when the world goes quiet, I can hear it through the walls, breathing, learning my silence, preparing space for the next guest. I chose the Airbnb because it was attached to a funeral home. That sounds worse than it was. The listing described it as a renovated carriage house behind a historic mortuary, quiet, respectful, and surprisingly cozy. I was traveling for a conference and every other place nearby was booked. The reviews were practical, almost boring. Clean and comfortable. Odd location, but no issues. Host was accommodating. No red flags, just a strange address. I arrived just before dusk. The funeral home itself was a tall brick building with narrow windows and a carved stone sign over the door. Lights glowed warmly inside. A black hearse was parked out front, polished and still. Behind the building, separated by a small courtyard, sat the Airbnb. White siding, yellow porch light, freshly painted door. The host, a woman named Lorraine, messaged me that the key was inside and apologized in advance if there was activity during my stay. "Services," she clarified. "Nothing you should worry about." Inside, the place was immaculate. New furniture, neutral colors. It smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old paper. There were no strange notes, no warnings, nothing theatrical. Just a welcome binder with Wi-Fi info and checkout instructions. I unpacked, ordered food, and tried not to think about the building looming a few yards away. That night, I slept poorly. Not because of noise, there was none, but because of a persistent sensation that I was being gently repositioned, like someone adjusting a pillow under my head without waking me. I woke with my arm numb, twisted at an awkward angle I didn't remember falling asleep in. I shrugged it off. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab coffee. The courtyard was busier than the night before. Several cars were parked now. People dressed in black stood near the funeral home entrance, speaking in low voices. A few glanced at me as I crossed the space. Their expressions were strange, not curious, appraising. One older man stared openly, his eyes widening slightly. He whispered something to the woman beside him. She looked at me, then quickly away, her mouth tightening. I assumed I'd violated some unspoken boundary. Maybe guests weren't meant to wander through during services. I kept my head down and left. When I returned later that afternoon, the mood had shifted. The courtyard was empty again. The hearse was gone. The air felt heavier, like the pressure before rain. On the porch of the Airbnb sat a bouquet of flowers, no card. I brought them inside, confused, and set them on the counter. When I opened the fridge, I noticed it had been restocked. Fresh fruit, sandwiches, bottled water. I checked the app. No message from Lorraine. That evening, there was a knock at my door. I hesitated, then opened it to find a young woman holding a casserole dish. She froze when she saw me. "Oh," she said softly. You're already here." "Yes," I said, equally confused. "Can I help you?" She stared at my face, eyes glossy. Then she shook her head as if correcting herself. "I'm sorry. I thought," her voice broke. "I'll just leave this." She placed the dish on the porch and hurried away. I stood there for a long moment before bringing it inside. The food was still warm. That night, I dreamed I was lying on a table, unable to move. Bright lights hovered above me. Faces leaned in and out of focus. Someone adjusted my hands, crossing them neatly over my chest. I tried to protest, but my mouth wouldn't open. When I woke, my hands were crossed. I stared at them until my chest started to ache. The next day, Lorraine finally responded to my messages. She apologized again for the confusion and explained that the funeral home was very active this week. "People get emotional," she wrote. "They see what they expect to see." I didn't know what that meant, but I accepted it. I was only staying 2 more nights. I could tolerate awkwardness. That afternoon, while working on my laptop, I heard music. Soft, muffled, a hymn. It drifted through the wall from the funeral home, slow and reverent. I tried to ignore it, but the melody tugged at something deep in my chest, a familiar ache I couldn't place. As the song ended, I heard applause. That startled me. I'd never heard applause at a funeral. Later, someone knocked again. This time, when I opened the door, there were 4 people standing there. A family. 2 middle-aged adults, a teenager, and a younger boy clutching a folded pamphlet. They all stared at me. The woman gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It really is him." The man stepped forward, eyes filling with tears. "We didn't think..." Lorraine said, "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I think there's been a mistake." The teenager frowned. "Dad?" "I'm not your father," I said, my voice shaking now. "I don't know you." The boy started crying. The woman reached out, stopping herself inches from my arm. "You look just like him," she said. "Exactly like him." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, closing the door before they could say more. I locked it and slid down against it, heart pounding. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I looked like myself, tired, pale maybe, but nothing else. Still, that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with my face, that if I stared too long, it would rearrange itself into something else. I woke to a message from Lorraine. "Could you stop by the office today when you have a moment? The funeral home's front door was unlocked. Inside, the air was cool and dry, thick with the scent of flowers and polish." Lorraine met me in the hallway. She was older than I'd imagined, her hair pulled back tightly, her expression careful. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wanted to clear up the confusion." She led me into a small office and closed the door. "There was a gentleman who passed earlier this week," she began, unexpectedly. "His services have been complicated." I nodded, unsure what to say. He had no immediate family nearby, no recent photos. Most people hadn't seen him in years. She slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a photograph. My stomach dropped. The man in the picture was me. Not similar, not resembling, identical. Same scar on the eyebrow, same crooked tooth visible when he smiled, same face. "I don't understand," I said. "That's not me." Lorraine studied me carefully. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I snapped, then faltered. "I mean, I've never been here before. I don't know anyone here." She nodded slowly. "That's what you said yesterday." I stared at her. "Yesterday," she sighed. "You came in asking about the flowers. You seemed disoriented." "I didn't," I said. My voice sounded thin. She stood. "Why don't you take the rest of the day to rest? Travel can be exhausting." I left in a daze. Back in the Airbnb, I tried to gather my things. My bag was lighter than I remembered. Several items were missing: clothes, a charger, my conference badge. In their place were things I didn't recognize: a neatly folded black suit, a pair of polished shoes, my size, a tie I would never wear. I opened the welcome binder again. Tucked into the back was a folded program, a funeral program. The photo on the front was of me. The name was wrong, different first name, same last. The dates were wrong too. The birth year was 5 years earlier than mine. The death date was yesterday. I laughed hysterically, then stopped abruptly when the sound echoed too loudly. Someone knocked. I didn't answer. The knocking continued, firmer now, insistent. "I know you're in there," Lorraine called gently. "We need to finish." I backed away, my legs weak. "I'm leaving," I shouted. "You're all insane." I grabbed my keys and ran outside. The courtyard was filled with people. All of them turned to look at me. Their faces were solemn, expectant. Someone began to clap, slowly, deliberately. Others joined in. I pushed through them, apologizing, shoving, my chest tight with panic. When I reached my car, it wouldn't start. Lorraine appeared beside me, calm and unhurried. "You've been very cooperative," she said. "That helps." "Let me go," I begged. "I don't know what this is, but I don't belong here." She touched my arm. "You do," she said softly. "You already did. We just needed you to remember." Her hand was cold. The world tilted. I woke up lying down, bright lights overhead, the familiar ache in my chest. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, unresponsive. People surrounded me, faces blurred, voices murmured. I tried to speak. No sound came out. Someone adjusted my hands, crossed them neatly. I wanted to scream, to thrash, to prove I was alive. But the more I struggled, the calmer everyone became. "See?" someone whispered. "He's at peace." Darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. The last thing I heard was Lorraine's voice close to my ear. "Thank you for staying with us," she said. "Please leave a review." When I woke again, it was morning. I was in my own bed. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a notification from Airbnb. Hope you enjoyed your stay. My calendar reminder popped up beneath it. Conference begins today. I sat up slowly. My chest felt hollow. When I stood, my reflection in the mirror startled me, not because it was wrong, because it looked finished. Later that day, as I passed the funeral home on my way to work, I saw a familiar face on the sign out front. My face. The date listed was today. I kept walking. No one stopped me. No one followed. But all day, people told me how sorry they were. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember why. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next video.